What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Sports Authorities. I'm Nathanael. That is Jordan Hart. On today's episode, we have a special episode for you. We are previewing this weekend's NFL playoff slate, as long as the national title game on Monday night. It's a big episode. It's going to be a little bit shorter, but it's going to be jam packed. So we hope you're excited, and let's get right
Yes,
into it.
sir. All right, so before we get going, I wanted to bring up one little topic. It just got announced last night. Heisman winner was Devontae Smith from Alabama, the first wide receiver to do it since 1991, and that was I believe
Desmond
Desmond Howard.
Howard.
I had it pulled up and I completely forgot to remember it. I think it was very deserving that he got it. All of them were great candidates. I know the vote ended before the bowl games, but Kyle Trask proved that he didn't belong uh, in the bowl game, even though the votes didn't happen. And then the rest, honestly, I think all four of them could have gotten it. But I think just looking at the stats, this was the best one to get it. I don't know if you had anything to take on that, but that was my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Devontae Smith had the best season in college football. He's absolutely deserving. I said a couple weeks ago I talked about Trevor Lawrence, and I thought about it a little bit more after that. And while I still do believe that Trevor Lawrence is the best player in college football, which is why he will be the number one overall
Mm-hmm.
pick, Devontae Smith had the best season, so therefore I agree he should win the Heisman. Very deserving. My other note on this, I was looking at. I always find it interesting because I don't know why so many
Yeah.
people get the vote on the Heisman. That's always been a little interesting to me. But I would just really like to talk to the five people that voted Ian Book for first place in the Heisman, and I would just really like to wonder like what in the world they
Yeah.
were they were watching. I mean, and like in my opinion, you could justify Devontae Smith, Trevor Lawrence, Mac
Mm-hmm.
Jones, Kyle Trask, and Najee. I think you can make an argument. While I don't agree with most of those,
Yeah.
I wouldn't agree with most of those arguments. Like you could make an argument for those five
Mm-hmm.
to potentially receive a Heisman vote. But I mean, sixth place in the Heisman vote was Brees
Yeah.
Hall, the sophomore running back from Iowa State, who he's really good, but like six people voted him as the Heisman. Like
No.
no one thinks he's the best player in college football. Like like with all due respect to him, like and five votes for Justin Fields. Like I
Yeah.
know what he just did Saturday, but all the votes were in before that. I mean, like come on, guys. Like I just think it's funny to look at those things. I don't know. I'd like to know those people's
Mm-hmm.
train of thoughts, but interesting votes.
I think that's just a little bit of their bias. I think they are more towards those teams than others, and felt bad and wanted to. They were like, "It's a weird season. Maybe they'll get it to pull it off." So they're gonna vote them, and then, oh look, they only got these votes.
Yeah.
That's cool. We're moving on. So yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to see those random votes come in and like, who thought that whenever they were looking at this. But you know what? It's whatever. It's a vote. They didn't
Hmm.
get it. We move on.
All right, so with that being said, we move on to this weekend's NFL playoff slate. The first weekend of the NFL playoffs, and the first time we've had six games on Wild Card Weekend. With the expanded playoffs this year,
Mm-hmm.
only one team getting the first round bye, so we have three games from each conference in the Wild Card Weekend. We're just going to run down the schedule. Starting off with the Colts at the Bills. The Bills are 6.5 point favorites at home against the Colts, who are the seventh seed. Um, I think this is an interesting matchup. Look, I think we've it's been well stated on this podcast. We think the Bills are the second best team in the AFC. In the AFC. Um, but I think this can be an interesting matchup. Jordan, what's your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think I like Philip Rivers and the Colts. They've been streaky throughout the year. They've had some ups and downs, but I like this team going into the playoffs. But as we stated multiple times in this podcast, they are going against my favorites for the playoff right now, the Bills. The Bills look very strong. I know it was against the Dolphins, but they did smack them 56-26. That's nothing to just frown about. I think this game is close throughout most of it. I like the Colts to stick with it, but I think at the end, Josh Allen and the Bills just take off, and I'm taking the Bills by
Yeah,
two
I mean,
TDs.
here's my thing in this. I think the Colts can definitely hang. The Colts need Jonathan Taylor to be available and play in this game. I know he's still questionable on the injury report.
Yes.
Um, if the Colts are without him, I mean that's tough to go to Buffalo without your leading rusher. and a guy who's really had a positive impact on the offense. My big thing, Philip Rivers and the Colts, and they've looked a lot better than I honestly thought they would this year. Me, obviously being a Chiefs fan, I've watched a lot of Philip
Mm-hmm.
Rivers over the last several years, and Philip Rivers in big games equals interceptions, and that's the thing. If the Colts want to win this game, Philip Rivers absolutely has to take care of the football and cannot afford to turn the ball over. As we saw last weekend for the Bills against the Dolphins, Tua turned the ball over several times, and it resulted in a blowout. If Philip Rivers
Yeah.
goes to Buffalo and starts throwing a
Mm-hmm.
couple picks around, this one will get out of hand real quick.
Bench him for Jacob Eason.
Probably not.
Let
Probably
him get his
not,
first start.
but that would be something.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it would.
Moving on to the next game, the Rams visit the Seahawks. The Seahawks are 3.5 point favorites in this game, which I was a little surprised. But these two teams, they both play in the NFC West, so they're division rivals. They know each other well. Um, the main storyline from this game is who are we going to see at quarterback for the Rams? They their head coach Sean McVay said yesterday that he will not name a starter before this game. We do know that Jared Goff has been throwing, so I think that's honestly a pretty good sign. I would
Mm-hmm.
assume if you're the Rams, if Jared Goff can play and throw the football 20 yards downfield, he's probably playing in this game. Josh Wolford, I think his name, did not look like a
Yeah.
stud last week. So, and I mean, it's a playoff
Mm-mm.
game. I would assume that if Jared Goff can, he is playing this week against the Seahawks. But listen, I think regardless of who plays for the Rams, this game's probably pretty ugly. These two teams just played a couple weeks ago in Week 16, and the final score was like 20-9 or something. So a pretty ugly game.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the difference in this game is going to be turnovers. Turnovers were the difference in Week 16. The Rams turned the ball over at least once, and the Seahawks didn't, and that was the difference. You're talking an 11-point game. So the Rams
Yep.
got to take care of the football, even if Jared Goff plays. But this game, I mean, who knows? It's just such a these two teams. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I haven't been impressed with the NFC West matchups all year long. They've always been pretty lackluster in how they play. They've not been too good. These teams, like you said, Week 16 it was a 20-9 game. They haven't been impressing me as late. These teams were pretty impressive at the beginning of the year. I thought the Seahawks at the beginning of the year could be one of the best teams, and then they proved to me that they weren't. As the season went on, the Rams have just been off and on all year. They haven't been the same since Jared Goff went off a couple years ago in that shootout with Patty Mahomes on Monday Night Football. But
Mm-hmm.
it like you said, going into this game, you really can't. You just got to go off of luck, and it's basically a coin flip. So I decided to coin flip it and get the Seahawks. I'm gonna take the Seahawks by a touchdown on this game. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Seahawks in this game. I just think there's too much uncertainty from the Rams. I'm sure the Rams probably have a good idea of who's starting at
Mm-hmm.
quarterback. We don't, and even if Jared Goff is, I mean, Jared Goff looked honestly pretty close to his 2018 self at the beginning of this year. But if Jared Goff's hurt, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, well, he's clearly, even if he's playing, it's still going to be bothering him. And I mean, like, you're a quarterback, you can't be having your hand be bothering
Mm-hmm.
you. So I think that's just a recipe for disaster, especially when these two teams play. It's usually pretty low scoring. You have to grind out your points, and I just think that is not a recipe for the Rams to be able to go into Seattle and get a win. Um, next game, the last game on Saturday night, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to Washington D.C. to play the Washington football team. The Bucks are 8 point favorites in this game, deservedly so. Um, I mean, this game is such an interesting matchup. The football team, no one expected them to be here. I mean, not a good record, not a good division, yet here they are. I mean, listen, this team, we've seen this team beat teams like the Steelers this year and pull out just some weird games. I don't think it's out of the equation for the football team to make this one weird and
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree with you here. It's a big game to end the day because the Washington football team has looked good as of late. I mean, obviously they took care of the Steelers a couple weeks ago when they were undefeated. They took care of their division even though it was very bad. So yeah, it is a very interesting game. I'm interested to see the matchup between Chase Young and Tom Brady, as you guys have seen all over Twitter and social media. He was yelling after the game last week saying, "I want Tom Brady." So It'll be interesting to see if Tom Brady takes that to heart or whatever. My opinion about the game, I think Washington's gonna stick around the first half. It's gonna be close. They might even be leading the game at the half, and then Tom Brady's gonna show up for once, and he's gonna take care of this game. I think the Bucs are gonna win by TDs, and I just want to apologize to Alex Smith. I know you really want this one, but you've got your own Lombardi trophy now because your wife decided to make it out of your leg cast. So I don't think you got anything to frown upon on this year, even though this game's gonna not end the way you want it to. But yeah, no, I think the Bucs will end up pulling away late, even though I believe Mike Evans will be out, right?
He's questioned.
Questionable.
I looked at the injury report. It said he's questionable, but I mean,
Who knows?
after seeing the way he went down,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised to see him be a factor in this game, especially if the Bucks get up early. I would be
Yeah,
surprised to see much of Mike
that's true.
Evans.
So yeah, I think, like I said, I think
Uh,
the Bucs win this.
yeah, I think I saw yesterday Ron Rivera said that they're potentially the football team is considering rotating quarterbacks during this game because they're worried about Alex Smith's mobility with a calf strain. I mean, listen, dude, if we're rotating between Alex Smith and I don't think Kyle Allen's healthy, so Taylor Heineke, I believe, is who we're rotating between.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's gonna be rough. That might be hard to watch, but I mean, Washington's made games interesting. I agree with you. I think they will hold around the first half. I think uh, the problem here for the football team is you have Alex Smith who is already a very non-mobile
Mhm.
quarterback post leg injury. And then you add a calf strain, which is going to make him even less
Yeah.
mobile. And then you have a Buccaneers defensive line that is honestly one of, if not the best
Yeah.
in the NFL. I think that just poses a ton of problems for the football team on the offensive side of the ball. If the Buccaneers can get any sort of pressure to Alex Smith, it's going to be hard for the football team to put up any sort of points. But I am excited to see Chase Young play. And the football team's front seven is, I mean,
Oh
they're
yeah.
also one of the best in the
Mhm.
NFL. That group is young, and they've really come on the
Mhm.
second half of the year. Uh, Chase Young, I mean, talk about, I mean, that has what turned out to be such a good pick
Yes.
so far at number two. I mean, you talk about a guy who's not only is playing extremely well in the field, but a guy who clearly has impressed enough in the locker room and in the community that they've already named him a captain,
Mhm.
not even at the end of his rookie season.
Exactly.
I mean, you talk about a guy who's really making a positive impact. Chase Young is that for the football team. You got a franchise player there in
Mhm.
Washington. But yeah, I just don't see how you bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs, especially as an 8-point favorite against a team like this. I just
Yep.
don't. I don't see how you could possibly bet against Tom Brady in this game. It's Brady in the playoffs, and I don't see how he honestly loses this
Yep.
game. Then our next game, the first game on Sunday, the Ravens 3.5-point favorites at the Titans. I was a little surprised when I got on today before the podcast and saw that the
Yeah.
Ravens were 3.5-point favorites in this game at Tennessee. Tennessee won in Baltimore earlier this year. Uh, I don't know. I was a little bit surprised by that. The FBI projections also have the Ravens, I believe, at 59% to win this
Mhm.
game. I don't know. To me, that was a little surprising.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I really like the Titans this year, especially with what Derrick Henry's doing. As we said last time, he had 2,000 yards this year, so it really outstanding, looking strong as always. And Lamar, don't get me wrong, he's starting to turn up late, but as you stated on your side, they've been against subpar opponents lately. They haven't really played anybody. They've gone by quiet this year. No one's really been too hyped about them, and now they're in the playoffs solely because they won the last game last week. If they'd lost that last game, they don't make it. So, you know, I haven't been really high on the Ravens this year, but this is a rematch from last year. This game was really good last year. I loved watching it. No one expected the Titans last year, and no one's expecting the Titans again this year, which makes no sense to me because they're playing out of their mind still. Like they're doing the same thing as they did last year. So, this game's gonna come down to basically who gets the last punch. I think Derrick Henry and the Titans get it again at home, and I'm taking the Titans by a field goal.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting points to this game. I mean, obviously, we touched on it in the last episode, but the Titans D is they're
Yeah.
suspect. They're not as good as they were last year at all. Uh, Clearly, by the fact that they gave up, they let the Texans score 8 possessions in a
Mm-hmm.
row on Sunday to come back and almost beat them in that game. The Titans defense is very suspect, and I'm sure if you're the Ravens offense, you're absolutely licking your chops at that sight. But Yeah, like you touched on, the Ravens have won 5 straight, but 4 of those 5 are against teams that aren't in the playoffs. They did beat, the Browns, on Monday night, but I mean, like, man, I'm not really I don't see the Ravens as 3.5-point favorites in this
Yeah.
game. I think the Titans still play a style of play on the offense where it's grind you out, we're gonna hold the ball for a long time, we're gonna have long drives down the field and brutalize you, and that is one of the keys we've seen to beating the Ravens. And I think here's the thing: if Tennessee gets up early in this game, we've we Lamar. Everyone talks about how Lamar is hasn't won a playoff game yet. He's 0-2 in
Yeah.
playoff games. And the problem is in both those games they've gotten down
Hmm.
early, and when Lamar gets down early in games, the Ravens struggle because Lamar is not. Listen, Lamar is a capable passer. He has a good completion percentage, but that's because the overwhelming majority of Lamar's throws in a game are, short, over the middle, screen passes and plays that are really just designed to combat the run and to spread out the defense and keep him
Yeah.
honest. He's not taking shots down the field. He's not, trying, he's not making Patrick Mahomes throws, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the problem is when they get down, John Harbaugh doesn't seem to want to stick to their running offense and how they normally play, and they seem to want to throw the
Yeah.
ball, to try and score quicker and get back in ball games, which makes sense to a point. But you got to, I mean, I've never understood why John Harbaugh just ditches away from what works so well for the Ravens when clearly the contrary doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so if Tennessee gets up early in this game, I think it's tough for the Ravens to come back because Lamar's just not a very capable passer when it comes to being down in games and having to make plays with his arm. That's just not where we see Lamar thrive. And I'm picking the Titans in this game.
Yep.
I think I think they control the ball on the offensive side with Derrick Henry, and I think even though their D is very suspect, I don't see this game being a massive shootout. Give me the Titans 31-24.
Okay.
I just don't see the Ravens winning this game, and I think the Titans get up early and are able to control the game on both sides of the ball.
Yep. I completely agree. I only had the Titans by a field goal, but like you said, if Lamar gets down early, he's not going to come out and perform. But, we'll have to just see when it comes to Sunday. The next game is the Bears versus the Saints on Sunday. This one's not a very intriguing matchup to me because I think the Saints are just going to walk all over the Bears. Before I was looking at Twitter earlier, Drew Brees, once again, it almost feels like it's every year, but Drew Brees is rumored to retire after this season. Don't know if that's going to happen or not because he's always rumored to do that. He's old. Who cares? He's playing like a beast anymore. So we don't really care about that part. I mean, this could, if this is true, this could affect how the performance is in the playoff because if this is his last season, I would not be completely surprised if he decides to throw for 5 touchdowns a game in this playoff and win the Super Bowl. So, all in all, the Saints have been, they've been a good team. They haven't been a great team, but the Bears have been bad. I don't like the Bears in this game. The Bears haven't looked good in my opinion all season. Trubisky is not the guy, especially if you want to beat the Saints, Chicago. So don't be excited about this game. So no, I'm taking the Saints by 2 touchdowns, easy.
Yeah, I'm with you here. The Saints are 10-point favorites. I'd absolutely take them to cover the spread in this game. I think this is the worst matchup of the weekend, indicated by the spread in this game. I just don't see how Mitch leads Chicago to an
Mm-hmm.
upset. And I think you're right. If this is it for Drew Brees, he's going to ball out. Listen, I mean, I just don't see how the Bears win. I think the Saints could start Taysom Hill at quarterback this week and still win this game by at least 2 scores. Like, the Bears are 8-8 and they struggled to 8-8.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were just never a convincing team at any point in the year. And they just, I mean, basically all the teams they beat were non-playoff
Yeah.
teams. So I don't see how the Bears pull this out. I mean, the Saints running back room, we're still not sure who they are and aren't going to have available after basically every single one of their running backs got COVID. I just don't think it matters. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think. Listen, Drew Brees could have the entire practice squad to throw to, and I still think the Saints are going to win this game. I just don't see how they lose. I mean, and the Saints' defense is also good. You guys have guys like Cam Jordan over there that I think just pose a massive problem for the Chicago offense. They really just don't pose a threat
Mm-hmm.
vertically. and I don't see any way that they go to New Orleans and beat the Saints.
Yep. And then the last game of the week, or of the weekend, I should say, is the Browns versus Steelers on a Sunday night matchup. It's another AFC North matchup between the two. They played last weekend. We saw that the Browns won, but that was without Steelers starters. They will get them all back for this game. I don't expect this to change, even with the staff out for the Browns. I think this is gonna be a very close game. Uh, I they're both both have over 10 wins on the season. Both have been very impressive in my eyes. They've both impressed me. This is not what I expected from either teams. Like I said, expect it to be close, but I'm sorry, Ohio. This is going to be a bad weekend for you guys. This is just the start of it. The Steelers are going to win this by a touchdown. The Browns' Cinderella season is going to come to an end this weekend, and I just want to apologize for that because it's just the beginning of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it. The Browns are without head coach Kevin Stefanski and a couple assistants in this game. I'm not really sure how that will affect the team. Um, I mean, it definitely doesn't benefit the team. We know
Mm-hmm.
that. But I mean, I was already lacking confidence in the Browns going into this game after they, barely beat Mason Rudolph last Sunday. The Steelers add Ben Roethlisberger back, which obviously is a massive upgrade at quarterback for this week. The Steelers still have a lot of people banged up and injured. We'll see how that plays a factor. I think they should get most of those guys back from what I read on Twitter for this week. But yeah, like you said, with these two teams, anything can happen. The Steelers are 6-point favorites. If I was betting on this game, I would just stay away from it and not bet on this game because, I mean, these
Yeah.
two teams are just so unpredictable when they play each other. I do think it'll stay a close game. Um, but yeah, I just don't. Don't have any. I wouldn't have any confidence in picking the Browns here, which is why I'm going with the Steelers. After last Sunday's showing,
Mm-hmm.
it came down to the last possession to beat Mason Rudolph and the Steelers. I think you just can't. I don't know. That gives me no confidence in the Browns to win this game. But I do think it'll be close. I think it'll be an entertaining game for sure for our last playoff game of the weekend. Uh, but with that being said, that's it for the weekend's NFL playoff slate. Monday night, we have the college football playoff national title game. The Crimson Tide of Alabama, the Buckeyes of the Ohio State University. Both teams come in undefeated, the 1 seed versus the 3 seed. Not many people expected Ohio State to be here. Everyone expected Alabama to be here. Um, I mean, listen, this wasn't the game I expected to be previewing a week ago, but here we are. Uh, I think this is a compelling matchup. Jordan, what give us some thoughts?
All right, so I know this has been a lot. This podcast so far has been a lot of hating on Justin Fields from me and this Ohio State team because I am an IU fan. But here we are, championship game. He's here. Um, he hasn't looked impressive all year, like I've said multiple times. But he did come in and drop. He destroyed Clemson's defense. Like it wasn't even like it. He just took care of everything there. And so did the rest of that offense. Like Trey Sermon, the Chris Olave kid, they all were out there ready to play.
Oof.
They are a crazy offense whenever they're ready to play. Uh, does that mean I'm going to take them this week? I don't know right now. Because Alabama's offense is also very good. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this team, but they are the best team in the country. Mac Jones is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the country right now, if not the greatest. Obviously, Devontae Smith is the best wide receiver and won Heisman, so he's deserving of that award for a reason. And then you also got Najee Harris as a running back. This is going to be a shootout if Justin Fields shows up and throws like he did in that last game. If Trey Sermon decides he wants to run like he can play, then this game becomes a shootout and a close one. But if Ohio State does not come out with that same energy they did against Clemson, I find it hard to believe that this team can pull it off. Alabama is too strong and can go every game. This is one of the most put together teams I've seen in a long time other than the LSU team last year. That could go every game and be consistently scoring as much as they have. Their lowest scoring game this season was last week against Notre Dame, where in my opinion, they just held back on them. So this game could go either way, and I think it comes down to basically what happened last week. It comes down to whatever Justin Fields we get, whatever not Trey Sermon we get, whatever Ohio State offense we get is going to affect this game. But in my eyes, even if Justin Fields shows up, I find it hard to bet against Bama. So I'm taking Alabama here. It could be either a touchdown or it could be 3. It's basically just how Ohio State shows up. But yeah, I'm taking Bama here. Roll Tide for the championship again, and SEC gets another one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the part of, which Ohio State team do we get? I think that for me is the biggest question coming in. I'm leaning towards thinking that we're going to get the Ohio State team like we did against Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
You come in with that massive chip on your shoulder against Clemson. I would be surprised to see that just, fall off the table and then come out flat against Alabama in a game that's, even bigger for this team. Listen, if Ohio State comes out like that, this game will probably be an instant classic. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking a game that's going to be high scoring because both teams don't have stellar defenses. You're talking about a game that's going to be high scoring from both sides. A game that will be up and down, uh, deep balls, great runs. I mean, you have two fantastic running backs on each side with Trey Sermon and Najee Harris. You have guys like Chris Olave and Devontae Smith, Mac Jones, Justin Fields. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
this game has all the makings to be an instant classic shootout. And I would not be surprised to see how we get this at all. A big question for me coming in this is how does Justin Fields look from a health
Yeah.
wise? I mean, like that dude got crushed on that hit by James Skalski. I mean, we saw him struggle. The meme. It's now became a meme of him. Wincing trying to get on the stationary bike.
Mm-hmm.
Um, eh, Listen, the thing for him is there's 10 days between games. That's a decent time to
Yep.
to recover for him, especially from an injury that a lot of guys do play the next week with. The interesting part for me is we haven't heard any updated diagnosis on
Mm-hmm.
him, so I would assume that's a good thing. Usually if it was something where he had a punctured lung or a lacerated kidney, something that probably would have taken him to the hospital.
Yeah.
Usually those reports get out pretty quickly, so I would assume nothing like that happened. It was a little alarming that in his post-game press conference he said they hadn't given him a diagnosis. So I mean, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what's no one knows
Not
what's going
really.
on with Justin Fields' health. I would assume he's going to be fine and going to be able to play. I mean, listen, we saw him throw those deep bombs in the second half after it happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would assume they've got enough ibuprofen to give the man to get him through the game. Yeah, like you said about Bama's defense, though, they looked. I thought they looked better against Notre Dame. Um, but you go the game before that against Florida, which has a way more potent
Yep.
offense than Notre Dame. Their offense, put up fantastic
Mm-hmm.
numbers all year, much like Ohio State did last week. And that was a 2-point game, and it came down to the last possession. And Florida put up a ton of points on Bama. So I don't think it's completely out of the question at all to see these two teams absolutely just boat race each other and us just get a fantastic shootout. I think for me, the interesting part when looking at both these two teams' offenses, because that's really what this game is going to boil down to, in my opinion. Uh, I think turnovers will play a massive difference in this game. If whichever defense can force a turnover or more
Mm-hmm.
turnovers, that will be a massive part in this game. If one of these defenses can force some turnovers, because both these two teams take pretty good care of the ball. But I think when you look at both these two offenses, Ohio State's offense seems to rely a little bit more on explosive
Mm-hmm.
plays. You look at in the game against Clemson, they have the two deep touchdown passes and some really long runs from Trey Sermon that really helped set them up. And even like going back and watching like the IU game, like a lot of their
Mm-hmm.
touchdowns are either set up by big plays or come off of a big play. And I think it's just interesting because you know Bama's defense isn't stellar, but one of the things they are better at is limiting those big
Yeah.
plays. And I think that it's interesting because Ohio State does seem to rely on those big plays. And it obviously helps that they have so many explosive guys like
Mm-hmm.
Trey Sermon and Chris Olave and Justin Fields that are big playmakers. But the difference between their offense and Alabama's offense is Alabama's offense, while it is also extremely explosive with guys like Najee and Devontae Smith, Alabama's offense also has the ability we've seen this year to drive the ball down the
Mm-hmm.
field. and have those long, beat up, drag you down drives down the football field that we haven't really seen from Ohio State this year. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we see more of those drives from Bama and how that affects Ohio State and how that affects the game. See if they try and keep Ohio State's defense out there for longer and wear them out a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more, and just see, if Justin Fields isn't hitting on those deep balls, and if Ohio State looks a little out of sync on their explosivity, can they still march the ball and move the ball down the field like we know Alabama can without their explosive plays? I think that's really interesting. Another storyline, saw yesterday that Jalen Waddle could return
Yep,
for
I
this
saw
game.
that.
Uh, it would be interesting to see, if he can return. I would assume it won't be in a full capacity. I would assume we
Yeah.
see him rather limited. Probably not going to see him on punt returns or anything like that. That would, just
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that he's going to get hit. I would assume we see him mostly in playing in his normal wide receiver role, and probably a pretty limited snap count. But I mean, hey, look, if you add Jalen Waddle back, this is, I mean, they've been the most explosive, the best, or maybe not the most explosive, but they've been the best statistical and just overall offense in the country uh, without Jalen
Uh-huh.
Waddle. And then you add a first
It's
round
scary.
high pick wide receiver like Jalen Waddle to go across from Devontae
Mm-hmm.
Smith. And I mean, that has problems written all
Yep.
over it for Ohio State. Um, Last thing here, Bama is -8. I think that's a bad spread if you're betting on this game. I don't think it's out of the question at all for Ohio State to lose by a touchdown in this game. Uh, just 8-point spreads are always terrible to bet
Mm-hmm.
on. I think I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Ohio State keep this within a touchdown,
Yeah.
and I honestly think there's a very good chance of that
Mm-hmm.
happening. The over under in this game though is at 75. I'm hammering the over. I think this game is an
Yep.
absolute shootout. I think it's instant classic. Uh, but like you, Jordan, I'm picking Alabama in this game. You can't bet against Alabama in national championship games, and
Mm-hmm.
especially uh, in this one. I think these two teams are extremely similar, and I just think Alabama is just a little better uh, at on both sides of the ball, and I think that's what gets the job done for the Crimson Tide. I think Nick Saban wins another national title to add to the absolute dynasty he's built at
Yep.
Alabama, and I think the Crimson Tide get another national title.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. But I think after that, we're about done with this surprise episode for you guys. I hope you guys do enjoy this one. We did take the time. We wanted to get this one out like separate because we wanted a little previews for all of it. It's a big weekend for these two sports, college football and NFL.
Big.
So if you guys do enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. We always love seeing you guys giving us feedback and everything on us. Really enjoying doing this, and other than that, I think that's about it, Nathanael.
Yep, like Jordan said, just make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with another episode probably around the regular time in the middle of next week. We'll be recapping what we just previewed as long as college basketball and maybe some other things. Thank you guys for tuning in again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.